Imagine a small group of islands in a peaceful lagoon, seemingly disconnected from the busy world around them. How did these humble beginnings turn into a successful empire, one of the richest places on Earth at its height? How did Venice, originally a safe haven for Italian refugees running away from invaders, become known for its wealth, creativity, and influence? And most fascinating of all, what caused its eventual downfall? Come with us on a journey through time as we uncover the fascinating story of Venice's economic growth and decline, guided by the mysterious forces of history and fair economic policies. But first, let's set the stage of what was happening in Europe at the time. The collapse of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CA created a seismic power vacuum, setting the stage for a tumultuous period in European history. In the wake of Rome's fall, the Italian peninsula and its neighboring regions became a patchwork of competing domains. Germanic tribes, including the Ostrogoths, Visigoths, and Lombards, established their realms across different corners of Europe, extending their influence into Italy and Spain. Meanwhile, the Byzantine Empire, centered in the thriving city of Constantinople, continued to exert substantial influence over this intricate and evolving geopolitical landscape. This momentous shift in the political landscape had profound consequences, not only for governance but also for the intricate web of trade networks that had sustained the Roman world for centuries. With the collapse of centralized Roman authority came the loss of vital infrastructure and protection for merchants and traders, ushering in an era of economic instability. The migration of diverse Germanic tribes and the emergence of new kingdoms further disrupted trade routes, leaving local economies in disarray. This period of transformation wasn't just marked by economic challenges. It also gave rise to significant social upheaval. The influx of various ethnic groups and the emergence of fresh political entities ignited social unrest and cultural clashes, as communities had to navigate the complexities of adapting to new rulers, laws, and customs. Furthermore, the decline of centralized authority led to a breakdown in social order, with people facing mounting challenges in maintaining law and order, ultimately resulting in heightened levels of violence and insecurity. In the midst of this chaos and turmoil in the 6th century, the foundations of Venice were laid by a resilient group of Italian refugees. Fleeing the relentless invasions of the Lombards and Huns, they sought refuge on the tranquil islands of a lagoon. Led by aristocrats, these settlers chose the marshy lagoons of Venice due to their natural defenses against the ravages of war. Here, in this watery sanctuary, they discovered a means of survival through fishing and farming. What began as scattered communities struggling for existence would eventually transform into the remarkable maritime Republic of Venice, a story of resilience, adaptation, and growth that would shape the course of history. The year is 727, and Venice stands at a crossroads of destiny. Its first duke also had just been elected, a move born from an anti-Byzantine military declaration. However, the political landscape of Venice during these early years was far from serene. Byzantine officials would succeed these early dukes until around 751, leaving the city in a state of perpetual flux. It was a Venice marked by internal strife, with various settlements competing for supremacy, and pro- and anti-Byzantine factions engaged in a tussle for control. At times, even the church authorities sought to acquire temporal influence in this ever-shifting realm. Yet, amidst this political maelstrom, Venice's economy soared. Situated advantageously on the shores of the Adriatic Sea, the city became a nexus of trade between the Byzantine Empire and the burgeoning Islamic world, a position both strategic and unique for its time. The waters that once symbolized uncertainty now brimmed with opportunity. As Venetian merchants navigated the sea lanes, their sails billowing with exotic goods and wealth. And although the Venetians possessed an advantageous geography, it was not the reason for their success. After all, many nations with excellent geographies have failed in the past. The reason for their success was way more nuanced. As the 8th century unfolded, Venice's political structure began to morph. It was during this period that the office of the Doge, the city's highest authority, took root. A figure whose influence would extend far beyond the confines of the city's lagoons. But it was in the early 9th century that Venice faced a pivotal moment. Doge Obelerio and his brother Beto, seizing an audacious gambit, formed an alliance with the Franks of Italy. Together they placed Venice under the authority of the Italian King Pippin, a move aimed at liberating themselves from Byzantine control. This bold maneuver, however, ignited a smoldering conflict. The pro-Byzantine population bristled at the loss of their imperial ties, leading to a long succession of disputes among leading families. In the midst of these political convulsions, Venice's economy continued to surge. The increase in private wealth fostered a sense of stability as a broader ruling class emerged, capable of tempering the power of the Doge. Gradually, a national identity began to crystallize, defining Venice as more than just a collection of islands. It was a maritime republic in the making. By the late 9th century, a significant shift occurred. Doges began to be chosen through popular election, although this right was not always exercised fairly during times of civil strife. Nonetheless, it was during this very century that Venice began to cast its radiant light across the seas, emerging as a beacon of economic prosperity and cultural vitality, leaving a legacy that would endure through the annals of history. Venice was on the cusp of a golden era, poised to shine brighter than ever before. In the year 1050, Venice embarked on a captivating economic journey, boasting a population of 45,000. By the year 1200, this magnificent city's population had swelled by more than 50%, reaching 70,000, a testament to its thriving prosperity. Fast forward to 1330, and Venice had yet again experienced a remarkable 50% population increase, now standing tall at 110,000 souls. At that point, Venice was as vast as Paris and nearly 3 times the size of London. But what caused Venice to boom and be overflown with wealth? Is it their advantageous geography? Partly, but many countries had advantageous geographies at the time. But what set Venice apart were their unique social and economic policies. A cornerstone of Venice's economic growth lay in a series of groundbreaking contractual innovations that aimed to create more inclusive economic institutions. Chief among these was the renowned commenda, a basic form of joint stock company specifically established for the duration of a single trading venture. A commenda consisted of a pair of partners, one sedentary partner also known as a commendator, or Stanske, who remained in Venice, and another who embarked on the journey known as tractator or socius procertans. The sedentary partner provided the bulk of the capital, while the traveling partner accompanied the cargo. It was a brilliant opportunity for aspiring entrepreneurs without personal wealth to enter the world of trade by joining the voyage. This system served as a vital avenue for achieving upward social mobility. Losses incurred during the journey were distributed in accordance with each partner's capital contribution. In cases where the voyage proved profitable, the initial capital would be returned to the investing partner, and the distribution of profits hinged on 2 distinct types of commenda contracts. Under a unilateral arrangement, the sedentary merchant, who supplied the entirety of the capital, received 75% of the profits. Additionally, the investing partner bore all the liability for loss, while the traveling partner bore none. In bilateral commendas, where the sedentary partner furnished 67% of the capital, they, in turn, received half of the profits. In such an arrangement, the investing partner bore 2/3 of any lose, while the traveling partner bore 1/3. Upon scrutinizing official records, it becomes evident just how influential the commenda system was in propelling individuals into higher social strata. These documents are replete with fresh names, signifying individuals who were previously not considered part of Venice's elite class. In government records dated 960, 971, and 982, these novel names constituted a significant proportion, accounting for 69%, 81%, and 65% respectively. This drive towards economic inclusivity, along with the ascent of newfound families through commerce, compelled the political system to adapt and become even more receptive to change. The leadership of Venice was vested in the figure of the Doge, chosen for a lifetime by the General Assembly. However, despite its inclusive title, the General Assembly was effectively controlled by a select group of influential families, while the Doge held substantial authority. The evolution of political structures progressively diminished his power. Post-1032, the Doge was elected in conjunction with the establishment of the Ducal Council, tasked with preventing the accumulation of absolute power by the Doge. Venice had, by the 11th century, established an intricate and advanced electoral system. The Doge of Venice, a position of paramount importance, serving as both the chief magistrate and leader of the Republic, was selected for a lifetime through a meticulously orchestrated election procedure conducted by the city's aristocracy. This process commenced with the populace of Venice electing 12 tribunes. These elected tribunes, in a subsequent step, would then collectively nominate 40 electors to represent them. Following this nomination, a random selection process reduced the number of electors from 40 to just 12, and these 12 individuals were charged with the weighty responsibility of identifying 25 potential candidates suitable for the esteemed role of Doge. From this pool of candidates, another round of random selection further narrowed them down to just 9 individuals. These 9 then undertook the responsibility of electing 45 electors. Again, a drawing of lots reduced this group to 11, and these 11 in turn selected 41 candidates for the role of Doge. The final round of random selection resulted in a cohort of 12 individuals who were entrusted with the crucial task of picking a single candidate who would assume the position of Doge. Despite the Doge's prestigious status, their authority was not absolute. Several factors were in place to limit their power and maintain the balance of governance in Venice. Firstly, the Doge had to solemnly swear an oath to uphold the laws and interests of the Republic. Any breach of this oath, such as treason or misconduct, could lead to their removal from office, or in extreme cases, even put their life in jeopardy. Furthermore, the Doge's rule was subject to checks and balances. They were assisted and overseen by various councils and magistrates who shared the executive, legislative, and judicial functions of the state. The Doge was also bound by certain restrictions, such as not being allowed to leave Venice without prior permission. Their place of residence was mandated to be the Doge's palace, which served as both their dwelling and the seat of government. Lastly, the Doge did not possess the authority to appoint their successor or bestow any titles or privileges upon their family members, ensuring that the power remained rooted in the office and not tied to familial dynasties. The initial Doge to contend with the influence of this council, Domenico Flabianico, hailed from a prosperous family involved in the silk trade, a family that had not traditionally occupied high-ranking positions. The 29th Doge of Venice reigned from 1032 to 1043. Notably, he belonged to the opposition party that vehemently resisted the Orseolo family's attempts to establish a hereditary monarchy in Venice. During his tenure as Doge, Flabianico introduced a pivotal constitutional law, marking the first in the Republic's history. This law effectively curtailed the powers of the Doge, preventing them from appointing a co-Doge or a successor. He also played a crucial role in the investiture of the Patriarch of Grado, asserting Venice's authority over its ecclesiastical affairs. Furthermore, his diplomatic prowess was evident in his peaceful relationship with Byzantium, leading to the conferment of prestigious titles such as Protospetharios, Imperial Patrician. This structural transformation was swiftly succeeded by a remarkable surge in Venetian trade and naval supremacy. By 1082, Venice received substantial trade privileges in Constantinople, leading to the establishment of a Venetian quarter within the city's confines. This enclave quickly accommodated a bustling population of 10,000 Venetians. It was a compelling illustration of how inclusive economic and political systems were synergistically coming into play. Venice's remarkable economic growth, which increasingly fueled the demand for political transformation, exploded following the shifts in both political and economic structures triggered by the assassination of the Doge in 1171. This pivotal period saw the emergence of a significant institutional change, the establishment of the Great Council. This council was slated to become the paramount source of political authority in Venice going forward. Comprised primarily of state functionaries, including judges, it was predominantly under the influence of the aristocratic class. In addition to the incumbent office holders, the Great Council introduced a system in which 100 fresh members were nominated annually. This selection process was overseen by a nominating committee, its 4 members chosen by lot from the existing council. Furthermore, the Great Council held the authority to designate the members for 2 auxiliary sub-councils, namely the Senate and the Council of 40, both entrusted with a range of legislative and executive responsibilities. Additionally, the Great Council extended its influence to the Ducal Council, augmenting its membership from 2 to 6. Another groundbreaking development was the establishment of a novel council, determined through a random selection process by the Great Council, responsible for nominating the future Doge. While the nomination had to secure ratification by the General Assembly, the council's influence in proposing a single candidate effectively tilted the scales in their favor. A third pivotal change involved the new Doge taking an oath of office that substantially limited their ducal powers. With the passage of time, these constraints underwent continual expansion. Subsequent Doges found themselves compelled to adhere to the rulings of magistrates, with all their decisions subject to approval by the Ducal Council. The Ducal Council also assumed the pivotal role of ensuring the Doge's compliance with the decisions of the Great Council. As a consequence of these political transformations, a subsequent wave of institutional innovations emerged in the realm of law. This era saw the establishment of independent magistrates, the introduction of various courts, including a Court of Appeals, and the enactment of novel private contract and bankruptcy laws. These new legal structures within the Venetian system facilitated the development of fresh business models and innovative contract types. This period witnessed a swift surge in financial ingenuity, marking the nascent stages of modern banking in Venice. The momentum propelling Venice towards a state of fully inclusive institutions appeared to be relentless. However, a palpable tension underscored this progress. The economic expansion, nurtured by the inclusive Venetian institutions, went hand in hand with a phenomenon known as creative destruction. With each new wave of enterprising young individuals who attained wealth through mechanisms like the commenda, the profits and economic dominance of the established elite inevitably dwindled. These newcomers didn't merely impact the elite's financial interests, they also posed a challenge to their political authority. Consequently, there was always an underlying temptation contingent on the elite's capacity to do so to limit the entry of these newcomers into the system, a decision often contemplated by the existing elite members seated within the Great Council. Upon its establishment, the Great Council operated with an annual membership selection process. As previously explained, at the conclusion of each year, a random draw designated 4 electors who were entrusted with the task of nominating the next year's 100 members. These nominations were ratified automatically. However, a significant alteration was proposed to the Great Council on October 3, 1286. The proposition entailed an amendment to the nomination process, suggesting that nominations had to secure a majority confirmation in the Council of 40, an entity tightly controlled by elite families. This adjustment would have conferred upon this elite segment the power to veto new nominations to the Council, a privilege they hadn't previously possessed. Regrettably for the proponents of this proposal, it was ultimately rejected. Subsequently, on October 5, 1286, another proposal was tabled, and this time it passed. This new regulation stipulated that henceforth, nominations would be automatically confirmed for individuals whose fathers and grandfathers had previously served on the council. For those without this lineage, confirmation would be required by the Ducal Council. On October 17, an additional alteration in the regulations was enacted, mandating that any appointment to the Great Council must secure approval from the Council of 40, the Doge, and the Ducal Council. The discussions and constitutional changes of 1286 served as a precursor to what would later be known as La Serrata, or the closure of Venice. In February 1297, a decision was reached that individuals who had held membership in the Great Council within the preceding 4 years would receive automatic nomination and approval. New nominations, however, would now necessitate the approval of the Council of 40, with a requirement of just 12 votes for confirmation. Following September 11, 1298, current members of the Great Council and their families no longer required external confirmation. This marked the effective closure of the Great Council to outsiders, effectively transforming its initial incumbents into a hereditary aristocracy. The final seal on this transformation came in 1315, with the introduction of the Libro d'Oro, or Gold Book, serving as the official registry of Venetian nobility. Nevertheless, those outside this emerging nobility did not concede their power without resistance. The period between 1297 and 1315 witnessed a steady escalation of political tensions in Venice. In response, the Great Council opted to expand its size, attempting to bring its most vocal opponents into the fold. Consequently, its membership increased from 450 to 1500 in a bid to alleviate these mounting political strains. In tandem with its expansion, the ruling regime also enacted repressive measures. In 1310, a police force was introduced for the first time, and there was a noticeable increase in internal control, presumably as a means to fortify the newly established political order. Having instituted a political serrata, The Great Council proceeded to introduce an economic serrator. The transition toward more extractive political institutions was now accompanied by a shift toward extractive economic structures. Most notably, they enforced a ban on the use of commenda contracts, a significant institutional innovation that had been instrumental in Venice's prosperity. This decision shouldn't come as a surprise. The commenda system had primarily favored emerging merchants, and the established elite was now striving to exclude them. This marked just one step in the direction of embracing more extractive economic institutions. Another crucial juncture emerged when, commencing in 1314, the Venetian state initiated a process of assuming control over and nationalizing trade. It organized state-owned galleys to partake in commercial activities, and starting in 1324, individuals were burdened with hefty taxes if they wished to engage in trade. This transformation meant that long-distance trade was now reserved for the nobility, marking the inception of Venice's gradual economic decline, with the principal avenues of business under the exclusive domain of a progressively narrower elite. Venice's prosperity began to wane. The city, which had seemed poised to evolve into the world's first inclusive society, the once inclusive political and economic institutions evolved into more extractive ones, spelling the onset of Venice's economic downturn. By the year 1500, the population had dwindled to a mere 100,000 inhabitants. In stark contrast to the rest of Europe's population growth, between 1650 and 1800, Venice experienced a notable decline in its population. In the present day, Venice relies almost exclusively on tourism as its economic lifeline, with minimal activity in sectors like fishing, rather than charting new trade routes and establishing innovative economic structures. The people of Venice are primarily engaged in crafting pizza, ice cream, and creating intricate colored glassware for the multitude of international visitors who flock to the city. Tourists arrive to behold the awe-inspiring historical treasures of Venice, including the iconic Doge's Palace and the revered lions gracing the St. Mark's Cathedral, which were plundered from Byzantium during Venice's Mediterranean dominance. Venice's evolution has led it from being an economic powerhouse to becoming a living museum, where the past is its most vibrant attraction. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know by liking and subscribing. Thank you for your time, and as always, have a nice day.